Good day and welcome to my new live stream. This time the live stream is about how to prepare for your video interview. Because nowadays you know how important it is to master your video interview skills, to make sure that you stand out from the crowd. And the beauty of a video interview is really that you can control almost everything from your side. And I say almost everything because it depends on us, basically. So it's completely different from in-person interviews where you have to adapt yourself to your surrounding, to everything that the employer really chooses for you. So it doesn't matter which video platform you are choosing to use. Stick with me till the end of this live stream to make sure that you know how to prepare for your video interview successfully. Okay, go ahead and say hello in the chat. I want to see you there in the chat, and also mention any of your video interview tips that you think had helped you at some point and would be interesting to discuss. Okay, if we haven't met before, I'm Marat from EMMOTION. I've worked in recruitment and in HR for a long time, and on this channel I really help you in your professional growth. And of course, in terms of video interviews, I have had so much experience, and I know that everything that I'll be discussing during this live stream is going to be helpful to you. So let me jump right into the first tip, the first point of a video interview. And before that, let me go ahead and check the chat and see what you guys are telling me. Atza, hello. Hello, right back. Donia, hi from Algeria. Hello, right back. Marie, hello, greetings from North Dakota. Great. Good to see you, Marie. Amy, hi Marat, nice to see you another Sunday. Hello, right back, Amy. Okay, great. So let me see. Going back to the interview checklist, to the video interview checklist, let me first tell you that finding the right spot is really one of the key points of video interview preparation. You need to make sure that the spot is quiet, comfortable. That's why you have to make sure that leaving the coffee shops or any other public shared spaces that you can't really control the noise or your background, you have to leave them aside, because the spot that you choose needs to be comfortable for you in all the aspects. And now let me go step by step through a checklist per this particular point. When it comes to a spot, let me tell you that the background and the surroundings in general need to be prepared in advance, because your interviewer really will be able to see whatever there is around you during the interview. So make sure there isn't anything in your background really that you wouldn't keep on your work desk. So, and that means no empty cups, no dirty laundry or laundry to be waited to be put away, no trash, of course. The view that you are projecting needs to be clean and organized. Remember that. And because you shouldn't give the interviewer anything else to focus on rather than how great you are and rather than what a good candidate you are. Okay? The same goes about noise control and distractions. And this is why, let me tell you, if you have somebody else at home, if you have kids or pets, you have to be prepared and know in advance what exact time you need for your surroundings to be quiet. That's why give people a heads up and let them know that you have an interview coming if these are people that you are sharing your space with. Otherwise, if you don't have anybody, if you really just share your house with your kids or your pets, maybe you could ask somebody to help you during that particular hour, maybe to take care and to look after your kids or your pets, to make sure that there are no screams, no noise, because any noise or constant screams will be very disruptive in your video interview, and you need to make sure that you avoid them. So the next major point would be setting up your technology. And why it's a major point? Because the most important part of your video interview is really making sure that you are ready for it. And that means that your technology needs to be ready as well. Because this is one of the phrases that I really like to tell you. You never get a second chance to make a good first impression again. So think about all of that in advance. Set it all up in advance. Your interview device, and when we speak about the interview device, I would personally always recommend interviewing from a computer, a laptop, a tablet even, but not from a smartphone. It doesn't mean that interviewing from a computer will get you the job. That's not about that. But it will definitely cause a better impression on your overall presentation and whatever it is you would like to project towards your potential employer. Okay, let me see what you guys are telling. See, Marie, no beer bottles. That's so funny. Exactly, no beer bottles, please. No bottles at all, unless it's a bottle of water. Okay, so the same goes if you go ahead and make sure that also you have a backup device. And why am I telling you about the backup device really? Because you need to be ready to switch to another device if anything goes wrong really. If anything goes wrong, if your device stops working, make sure you have a tablet, you have another laptop, or as a last option, as I said, maybe another smartphone. But make sure all of these are properly charged and ready to go. And you really need to make sure that your Plan B options have the software, the video software installed as well, because you might have a backup option and then afterwards you don't really have a video software on it, so it's not going to be helpful at all. So make sure you have a backup device, and make sure you remove all the tech distractions as well. And why do I tell this? Because nowadays it's so easy to get distracted if your phone is not switched off to a silent mode, Aside from that, you also need to remember to switch to a silent mode. Any other electronic assistants that you might have, like Siri, Alexa, Google Home, or anything else that you might have activated. So make sure they wouldn't interrupt your video interview. The same goes well when it comes to using a headset really, because using a headset is going to help you, especially if you use earplugs, earbuds. They will ensure that your speech is clear, and because the laptop incorporated microphones are going to make your life so much harder, because they produce a lot of echo, and that is going to ruin your video call. So when you use a headset, it's going to eliminate that echo, and your answers are going to be a lot easier to listen to and to hear. So believe me, as somebody who constantly interviews and does video interviews, nothing is more frustrating than having to ask somebody to repeat themselves multiple times over and over again. Believe me, that makes the interview exhausting for any employer. Okay, let me see so far. Why not a smartphone? Dunya is asking. Video quality is better in smartphones than in laptops. Yes, you know why not a smartphone? Because the smartphone, even if you put it in a horizontal mode, it's going to project a different image of you, because the interviewer is probably going to interview you from a bigger screen, and you will come up I mean, your image is going to come up quite distort, because it's going to be distortioned, because if you are using a smartphone, you either have a vertical way of putting it or horizontal, and either way it's not going to be as powerful in terms of projection, even though the quality of the image would be positive, it would be good. I'm not going to tell you no, but the way that you would project all your answers and everything you would say is going to become complicated, a lot more complicated than from a laptop or from a computer with a webcam. Aside from that, when it comes to your smartphone, it's hard to position it, because it's hard to keep your smartphone at a certain level, especially on an eye level. So you eventually need to look down on your interviewer, or you will look to the side or anything else, which will, especially if you're looking down, it seems like you're looking down on your interviewer, and that is never, it's subconsciously sends a signal like you are looking down on them. So even though, as I said, it is an option and you can use it, of course, it doesn't mean that using a smartphone is immediately going to work against you, but it is going to lower the impact you make with your interview. I hope it's understandable. Otherwise, go ahead and ask me the following question. Okay, so let me continue further. Aside from the device, what else do we need? The camera, of course. So depending on the camera that you have, of course, if you're using your smartphone, as I already said, the camera tends to be quite good, so you can have a good image quality. But sometimes if you use a laptop camera, the quality might vary, especially if it's an old laptop. So make sure you try it before and you know what kind of quality it is. If it's not a good quality, get a webcam, ask somebody to lend you a webcam for a few hours or for a day or whatever. And the same goes on the level. As I said, the level of your webcam needs to be an eye level, so it would really seem like you are looking into their eye. So it wouldn't seem like you're looking to the side or you're looking down, because it's also a good idea for you to practice looking into the camera as well. I tell this, but I know that it's quite complicated, especially if you haven't had enough practice. But looking into the camera while responding is going to make your answers more powerful. It doesn't mean that it's a must, completely must, because as interviewers understand completely that you might be focused on looking at them, on looking at their image, or you can be focused on looking at the Skype screen or Zoom screen. But if you practice, especially on certain answers that you give, if you practice looking straight into the camera, it's going to make your responses more powerful. So do whatever adjustments that you need to do to make sure, before the interview, of course, to make sure that you have one less thing to worry about when it comes to technology and when it comes to your camera. And the same goes to the camera lens. And this happens to me as well during my live streams. Unfortunately, sometimes I forget because I can move my webcam somewhere, and sometimes I don't remember to clean the camera lens, and it might be dusty or it might have a fingerprint without me even realizing it, and it might lower your image quality quite considerably. So make sure that is also sorted. And now let me see what Dunya, that makes sense now. Okay, glad to hear that. The same goes, the next point is really, when it comes to technology, is lighting. Lighting is an important part of any video and presentation. Somehow it's something that many candidates do not address, and myself even, I wasn't properly aware of it until I started making videos, because having a good lighting, and this is for everybody, anyone who, whether it's a video interview, whether you are actually doing a video presentation, any type of call that you might be making, a good lighting is really the best way to make yourself look good and stand out in the video. Because if your interview spot is not really well lit, if it's not in front of the window, and when I tell you in front of the window, it doesn't mean direct sunlight. No direct sunlight. Remember that. Never windows with direct sunlight. But if it's in front of the window with the light, that would definitely be a good option. If it's not, try setting up a few bright lamps and on each side, on each of your sides, and put a white paper sheet on top of the lights. And it might seem silly, but putting a sheet of paper over the light is going to help you diffuse and minimize any glare, and it will also keep the shadows away. Let me just do a quick. Let me just show you quickly. Look at my hand. You see the shadow that I'm making? Okay, it's not as strong. It's not as strong because my lighting is diffused, but I also have two lights on each side. So you can see when I lift my hand, I have a slight shadow because I'm in the office and I have to make sure that the lighting is consistent even during this live stream. So this makes the lighting part even more clear. And of course, you could easily invest in one of those light rings as well, because some of them are quite inexpensive and it's a well worth investment. I have one, but I don't use it right now because for my live streams, somehow I prefer having two lights on each side. It kind of gives me, it doesn't make it so artificial. I've tried it as well with a light ring, but it kind of gives an impression of an artificial lighting immediately. So this is how I prefer doing it, at least for now. And so make sure if you don't have any lights that you could move around the house, maybe it's worth getting a light ring, and it's a good investment, and they are quite cheap right now. So going to the next point of your setting, internet connection. Of course, let me see. Sparky Themes just joined in. Greetings. Hello, right back, Sparky Themes. Great to see you. These are some interview tips, video interview tips. So make sure you ask me any questions that you might have, or if you have any tip to share as well that really worked for you, let me know. Okay, so going back to the internet connection. Internet connection can be tricky because we can all have really good internet connection, but you never know if at any moment that you might get a poor signal, and this will cause interruptions, this will cause miscommunication, this will cause your voice breaking up, and you don't really need that. So if you're using Wi-Fi, make sure you don't have any other devices connected which are taking a lot of bandwidth during your interview. And I tell that because bandwidth in terms of like streaming videos, if there is somebody else at home with you, make sure they are off YouTube or any other streaming platforms, because it's going to make your connection slower. And just in case, you need it to be just the best that you can have. And the same goes if your Wi-Fi eventually betrays you. You need to make sure that your smartphone has a hotspot set. If you don't know how to do it, Google it, but you need to set up your phone's hotspot connection, because this way, if there is any interruption, the hotspot gets connected immediately, and so you won't lose your interview signal and you won't have to restart the whole interview. I even now have it connected just in case if my stream goes wrong, so I would get connected from my phone. Now the same goes when it comes to interview software, because there are different softwares that I used, and the different platforms, and it's really it's complicated to have all of them installed, but you can definitely, because most of them are quite common. So it could be Skype, it could be Google Hangouts, it could be FaceTime, of course Zoom, and you need to have them installed not only on your main device, but as well on your backup device, at least that particular device that is going to be used. And make sure that your username, this is something that many people don't really pay attention to, but since you've been using it, you might have been using it for personal conversations or for personal chats. Make sure that your username is actually professional and your picture is also presentable. Why? Because it's going to be a distraction if you don't change it, or if you don't have a professional username or picture. It's going to be a distraction. It will distract not only your interviewer, but also you as well. And believe me, I know what I'm talking about. It's definitely distracting having a picture that you might use on your Facebook page or on Instagram, constantly showing up, and it doesn't really project that image you would like to project for your video interview. Okay, so let me see. I see Sparky themes. To soften my face and relax before cameras, I imagine my beloved pet and get into my feelings regarding that pet. Oh, that is a really good strategy, actually. I love it. I have to try it as well. Sometimes I do, but not before the video calls. That is a good strategy to use. Let me see, Marie. Oh my God, I live in a little hick town with no tower. So speaking from experience, if you can interview with a friend or relative with a great connection, go for it. Yes, absolutely, Marie. That's a great advice, because if you already know that you might have a poor service at a certain point, you definitely don't want to experience that during the video interview, because it's going to if it's already nerve-wracking and it's a pressure for you to go through a video interview with so much preparation, it's going to add an extra pressure and extra uncomfortable, because you have something else to worry about and something else to deal with, and you need this to be going as flawless as possible. Okay, so let me see what else. Yandi, hi sir, hello, right back. Good to see you joining. Sparky themes, I love the backup connection idea too. Yes, it's very useful, especially if you at some point you are away from your router and the connection is not as strong, or you are moving around your house. It doesn't necessarily mean for a video interview, but for video calls in general, having your phone's hotspot set up as well would help your device get connected, would help a laptop get connected without any interruptions. Okay, now we are going ahead, proceeding to the next part. Let me see what I have Yandi asking me. I'm a fashion designer. Can I have a bright future? Tell me about it. We'll have to discuss it after I finish the main part of the video interview tips, and you go ahead and ask me any kind of questions that you might have about your possible future as a designer. I would be glad to respond to them all. Okay, so let me go ahead and proceed to the next point when it comes to projecting that confident image. The next point is really dressing just like you would for an in-person interview. You know, it's quite funny because sometimes I've been asked, even during the live streams or on my YouTube page, sometimes I get asked, oh, so what is the dress code for a video interview? And it's a funny question because there is no dress code for a video interview, you know, because the rule number one for video interviews is really to treat video interviews just like a real interview, just like a real in-person interview, or just like if you are standing in front of a panel of people. Really, you have to physically look good and dress accordingly. Believe me, because looking good and dressing well for your interview is going to boost your mood, and it's also going to give you more confidence. It's going to be a confidence boost as well for you, because you look good, you feel good, and you project more confidence. Okay, so what I can also tell you, and it's quite interesting, I think, also for me to mention, because it's from my own experience, that you need to make sure that you avoid using the same colors as your background. And why? Because when you have a white background, for example, and use a white outfit or a very light colored outfit, it will eventually look a little weird, and you will come across as it might blur just into the background, you know. So I learned it for my live streams as well. Well, right now I would normally have a jacket on, a blazer on as well, but I found out that the lighting is much better when you have a contrast with your background as well. So if the background is not really light, make sure that you dress accordingly so you would actually stand out. And it's also because you need really solid contrast outfit to make sure that you can stand out from your background. Is it clear? Just let me know if you have any doubts about that. And let me see some of your comments. Okay, are video interview questions different from normal interview questions? No, they are not. No, they are not. And if you'd like, I'll go through some of the main questions that you get asked during your video interviews right after finish the main part of the stream, and I will respond to it before we finish. Okay. And let me see. Can you tell me about the interview questions of fashion designing? Yes, I will go through that as well. Okay, so let me proceed to the next point. And the next point of the video interview preparation is really something that is really easy to do, especially if you've been, especially if you already know what to expect, and if you have a video link as well that you've been sent by the company. Make sure you use this video link and you practice. You practice right before, a day before your interview. You could try using, you could use the software. If the link is not working because it's not activated yet, maybe you could create another one with some of your friends, or just from another device, or yourself. Just make sure you create it, you practice with it, and you train with it. You can do a little mock interview to make sure that you double check that all your technology is working, that everything is working, your connection, your power is not disrupted, everything is perfectly plugged and ready to go. And also I would really recommend you going ahead and using a few mock interviews to train. I have a few mock interviews which I made to train for your interviews. Try them. I guarantee that they are going to boost your confidence, because you will probably answer most of the questions that you might get asked during your interview as well. So go ahead and try them. The same goes to make it more real, as I said, practicing with your friend or even with yourself, recording your screen. This could be a very good way of practicing, because this way you can record and analyze really how did you come across, were your answers real, and did your interview feel comfortable, did your delivery feel comfortable. And you will also test your audio video equipment, you know, because it's easier to review it once you have it recorded. The same goes for your background and everything else. And now let me go to the part that you might need to prepare to make sure that you have this information in front of you. And that would be some of the things that you need to keep close is your interview questions, for example. Some of your interview questions, you might not need them really, whether it's an information about the role or your interview questions or information about the company or your questions for your interviewers. You might not necessarily need them, but having them right in front or having them on your screen or on a piece of paper in front of you is going to make you feel much more confident, because you know that at any moment you can stop and look directly and you can find any answer that you want to. So believe me, that is going to be, I give this advice, and most of the times the candidates after finishing the interview or really the feedback that I received is that they eventually didn't even use it, you know. It's a tool to make sure that you come across more confident, but you might not even need to use it after all. The same goes, you know, to just knowing that you can access to this information at any time is going to really help you out. And you always also make sure that you if we go ahead and really discuss some of the questions that you will ask, make sure you ask really relevant questions for your positions. You don't need to go ahead and ask things like vacations or going into the area of how quickly can I get a promotion. Questions that are usually that I would recommend you to wait for an in-person interview or to wait really for the interviewer to address. The same goes when it comes to salary. The same goes to salary information. I would wait for the interviewer to address these questions. Okay, so another thing that I recommend keeping closer to you, it's something that that I've learned myself with time as well, and I recommend you to keep a bottle of water right in front or right next to you, because at any moment, in case if your voice really gets raspy, or if you might need, because you feel that you need to clear your throat or anything. So a bottle of water is going to be very helpful, and I tell you a bottle because remember how many times I'm sure this has happened to any of us, is basically spilling and knocking over the water cup or the water glass, and that's not the moment, that's not a good moment for it. So make sure that it doesn't happen during your interview, otherwise it's going to be slightly awkward. It doesn't mean that it's a life or death situation, but if you can prevent it, even a slight, tiny possibility of this happening, if you can really prevent it, that's better. And the same goes when to the next tip is really to make sure that you have everything ready and you are connected at least 10-15 minutes. I always advise to my candidates to make sure that they are connected and they have everything ready about 10-15 minutes before the interview. Why? Because this way you show that you are interested in the job, but that's not only it. It's because it will make you feel much more calm and confident. And why do I tell this? Because when you have everything set up and ready to go and you are connected with time, you can use these last minutes to actually for positive thinking. Just like Sparky Themes mentioned in the chat, that she visualizes her beloved pet before the interview, you can have these positive thoughts and projections in your mind, and this way think positive about something that makes you feel more comfortable, more warm, and more approachable, and also more dynamic, and something that would make you smile. All of that, if you do it with time, it's going to immediately translate into what you project into your image, the image that you project during your video call. I don't know if you agree, if you've ever done that, but I have, and I know that it really works. Just in general, let me see, I have some questions in the chat. David, can I use a video filter on Zoom? You know, you can, but if you can avoid using video filters, it's better. If you can actually make an image, if you actually work on your lighting before and you can make it work without the video filter, is better. But of course, if you think that the image quality is better and the contrast is better, the colors are better, go ahead and as long as it doesn't come across artificial and it's not that obvious that you're using a filter, as long as it's not really strong. Okay, we can discuss it later on, and you tell me what kind of filters that you are planning to use. Is it acceptable to ask the possibility of getting scholarship funding from the company to get a higher degree or education? Okay, that's something that I'll address right after. Upliv, having a sip of water can help. Upliv, hello, good to see you, by the way. I'm really glad that you've joined in. Having a sip of water can help you with settling your nerves, and it buys you a few seconds to break to think about your answers. Yes, exactly, because it's so common and it's really easy, really understandable also for anyone that you are taking this short break and that you are actually having a sip of water, and it's going to be as long as it fits the moment as well and you feel comfortable in doing this. Don't force yourself on drinking just for the sake of it. No, as long as it feels comfortable and you just take a small pause and you drink. And as I said, if you don't want to go for a bottle, you can go ahead and go for a glass or a cup. That's absolutely no problem. But as I said, make sure that you don't spill it right during your interview. Okay, so let me see the next part really, and this is something that I constantly tell. The job interview is really not life or death situation. I've told you before, and I tell you now, if something really unexpected happens, if, for example, a family member or a pet, a roommate, or anyone else interrupts you or is being loud, just don't overreact. Any unseen circumstances that might happen, it doesn't mean that you would need to overreact and feel bad about it. Just make sure you also don't ignore it. Just apologize and tell you and let them give you a minute or a few seconds to sort it out, whether it's somebody that is bothering you or it's a certain noise. Make sure that you are not so harsh on yourself, and make sure you don't beat yourself up for it, because it can really happen to anyone and it's completely understandable. I'm going through this checklist to make sure that we can control almost everything, but you can't control everything, absolutely everything, so it might happen, and don't worry about it. Okay? So this is the main part of what I wanted to tell you about the video interview tips. And of course, make sure that you thumb up the video if you thought these tips are useful, and I will definitely now go ahead and respond to your questions. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them, and let me go ahead and respond the question that I promised to respond. Okay, video interview questions, are they different from a normal interview? Okay, this is a good question, because you might typically think, what are the video interview questions? Video interview questions are really the same questions that you are being asked in an in-person interview. But of course, the difference is that you can have your cheat sheet prepared. You can have certain answers to the interview questions right in front, or on a piece of paper, or on your computer screen. So it makes it really different. I would tell you to prepare. Tell me about yourself question. Why do you want to work for us? Why should we hire you? Why did you leave your last position, or why you are interested in changing jobs? What are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? The same goes on your major achievements. The same goes about the most difficult situations that you've managed or you've handled, and some of the competency-based questions, behavioral questions, that where you need to tell the interviewer exactly what you did and how you did it. Okay, for example, tell me about the last time that you've handled an emergency at work. Let me know what it was and tell me how you handled it, step by step. So this time, this is a behavioral question where you need to use that STAR formula that I have in one of my videos. So make sure you go ahead and check it. Okay, so let me go ahead and, was it clear, Dunya? Let me know. If not, I will answer any further questions. The interview questions of fashion designing. This question made by Yandy, depending on a field that you are applying, depending on a field that you are really interviewing for, they might have different questions for you, of course, and they might have questions directly related to your field of study, or the field where this work is and the industry is. So make sure that you know what is your competition, what does the company do, where do they sell their products, how do they sell their products, the type of products they make, the price range, etc. Just study and prepare properly on what the company does and on your competition, because it's going to be very helpful. So in this case, in terms of fashion design, you can be asked, what are other brands which are similar to this brand, or what other brands you think would be a reference this year? Whatever else that concerns the industry can be asked, or whatever industry news that you might find out through the news can be asked, to make sure that you understand and you are well prepared and you know your industry. So it's something that can be asked easily. Okay, the video filter. And the video filter, David, as I said, use it if you consider it acceptable, if it doesn't really distort much, if it gives you a natural look, you can use it, of course. But I would rather have you your interview spot properly lit, and your camera well positioned, and that really the quality of the image that you are projecting during your video interview needs to be already good enough without any filters. But if you can't achieve that, you can use the filter, as long as the filter is natural. Okay, so Aries, is it acceptable to ask the possibility of getting a scholarship funding from the company to get a higher degree or education? Okay, this question, as I said, I would address it, and I would really not advise you to ask. This isn't a good question to ask in a first interview, especially if the company doesn't bring it up. If the company doesn't tell you that they are actually going to sponsor and give a scholarship to anyone that is going to be accepted for this position. because it might make you look pretentious in terms of having high demands, you know, and you don't want to project that during your video interview. Okay, so I believe, hello Marat, sorry for my late arrival. No worries at all. I'm glad you've made it, and I know how late it is over there in Australia. So I'm really glad that you've joined in. And Dunya, very clear, thanks. You are very welcome. Okay, so I have another question in here. Should I discuss my salary during an interview? This is exactly something that I've made reference to, and I think it's quite good for us to really recheck, because salaries, the salary moment is a little bit sensitive depending on your employer. Some employers would give it away straight away, and they would just tell you how much you are going to make for this in this position, or they just publish the salary alongside the job offer, and so it's much easier to handle the situation later on, because you already know what is their budget and what the company might offer for this role, and you already know from the start whether they would be willing to negotiate or not, because during the first interview or the first call, you could tell that the salary, if they approached you, you could tell that the salary is slightly out of range. But if there is nothing really given on this point, wait, always wait until the employer brings it up. Unless, of course, you've done 3 interviews and nobody really brought the salary up, and of course, in that case, I would really advise you to speak up about it. Normally, interviewers would ask for your salary expectations to make sure that they know what kind of range we are speaking about. And if they go ahead further on, and if they proceed to further interview stages, this means that they already know what to expect from you in terms of salary. You know, so unless some low quality employers might really waste your time on it, and I know that this happens as well. And if you get an impression from your interviewers, like if you get red flags from the company, then make sure that you discuss the salary before waiting for them to bring it up. Because if you see red flags on the way that your interviewer is behaving, or the way that the information that this company is giving you, then you can go ahead and ask about what is the salary range for this role. To ask it as a general question like this, without really demanding or without really giving any figures from your side. Okay. So let me see. The next question is about the interview. Lasting. Is it a bad sign that my interview lasted for half an hour? Okay, I get these questions quite often, especially on the video where I mentioned all the signs that your interview went well, because one of the signs that the interview is going well is when the interviewer is really spending time and taking time to get to know you. When they really invest time in getting to know you, and you know, the typical interview is really about 45 minutes, an hour at least. It depends on each position. It could be if there are different stages. If it's just a maybe first phone interview, of course it can last less. It can be 10 minutes, it can be 5 minutes, as long as they get a certain information about you and you can get a certain vibe or information from them. But when it comes to interviews that are in-person interviews or video interviews which are scheduled in advance, you are usually given the time frame that you might be spending during your interview. So that immediately makes it clear whether the interview was shorter, a lot shorter, or longer than what it was initially planned for. Okay, so this is why I tell you, if the interview has been a lot shorter than what you have initially had planned or what the interviewer had in mind previously, then it is a bad sign or it is a negative sign. But as I say, there is no 100% right or wrong in here. Okay. Okay, Dunya is asking how to deal with the fear of returning to work interviewing after years of chronic health problems. You know, Dunya, it's really important that you, first of all, feel good about working. And it's really important also that you really want to work, because otherwise if you have health difficulties, or if you had in the past, of course your self-esteem might be lower than than when you're currently working and you're just looking for another job. So the first thing would be working on your self-esteem, Dunya, because you need to make sure that you project this knowing and being sure about what you can offer to the company, what you can bring to the table. Because if you are not, that is going to be projected during your interview. And this is why I recommend do everything aside from searching for a job. Do anything else that really makes you happy while you are searching for a job, if you are not employed at the moment. So this way, if you keep yourself busy, if you really feel upbeat, and if your self-esteem is not in its low moment, this is going to be projected during your interview. So I usually give this advice, and sometimes it can be really silly, but it does work. Just think that you can bring so much to the company that they are lucky to have you, and have these thoughts projected before each of your interviews. It's going to immediately make you feel more upbeat, and of course your self-confidence is going to be shown as well during the interview. So let me know what you think. Let me know also what other things that really work for you to boost your self-confidence. Okay, so let me see to the next question that I have. What is the way to make a good impression and not appear very nervous? Okay, it's a good question because it's something that we all think about. Of course, to make a good impression and at the same time not appear nervous. Two of these things are not connected. You can be nervous and you can appear nervous and still make a good impression. So that already takes part of the pressure off your shoulders. Make sure that you don't carry this pressure that if you feel nervous, you will cause a bad impression, because that's not true. As I say, sometimes we can feel really overwhelmed. This is why I always tell you to think positive and to act positive and to prepare for your interviews, to be yourself, to really do the mock interviews and do the preparation for your interview in advance, to search and research for whatever the company does, about the company, about your interviewers. Treat the interview really as a conversation. This is also, and as I'm telling you this, the same goes to my live streams, for example, or any other video call. When it feels more natural and when it feels like a conversation, it flows so much better. That's why I really appreciate all your inputs in the chat and your questions and your comments and some of your advice. You know, you guys know that especially when it comes to some of the topics like toxic work environment, I've actually learned a few things from you, from each of the experiences that you've shared and each of the things that you've told. So the same, I'm trying to project this interview information because I've done many video interviews. So I know what really makes you more confident and what really makes you less confident. So that's why I'm telling you, feeling nervous, for me, it only shows that the candidate really wants the job and they might feel nervous. And I usually try to break the ice myself. Try to break the ice and make sure the candidate is comfortable. If it's not successful, then of course I can see that being too overwhelmed does impact the way that the candidate addresses their answers. So because when we are overwhelmed, when we are too nervous and it's constantly showing, you can respond to the question too quickly, or you can respond to the question just telling the same things over and over without really going straight to the point. So the key part really is not being too overwhelmed and eventually controlling your nerves, because and that, as I said, is making sure that you take off your shoulders any extra weight, unnecessary weight, that you think positive, that you act positive, that you treat this interview as a conversation, that you establish an eye contact, even though it's through the webcam, but make sure that you look on the screen, you look in front of you, so as much eye contact as possible. And the same, this is something that they recommended in public speaking. It doesn't mean that it's really easier to apply, because I've watched a lot of public speaking information, but unfortunately I can't apply a lot of them on my own speech. But I know I just transmit what is the one of the main tips really. Make sure that you speak slowly and you pace yourself while you speak, without really being too slow, because sometimes I can make this mistake as well. I pause too much during my speech. So this is also a slightly negative in your job interviews, because if you pause constantly, it might feel a little overwhelming for the interviewers. But if you actually speak in a slower pace, but make sure that everything you say is understandable, and you come across also, you're projecting this confidence, you're coming across warm and positive, believe me, it's going to make a difference. Okay, let me see if I have any other questions on here. Yes, I do, and I have a question in the chat as well. Aries, thanks Marat, you are very welcome. Dunya, thanks for your words, you are so helpful. I will work on that. You are very welcome. I'm glad that it helped. Van Lemuel, I know this out of a blue question. Why is it so hard to find a job nowadays? I'm from the Philippines. It's not out of the blue question. It's a question which is completely related to what we are discussing. And to be honest, I can definitely understand where you're coming from. It doesn't mean a job search has never really been easy. It has always been hard. It has always been complicated as well. And right now we are experiencing, it's starting to move again, but after the whole situation with the pandemic, a lot of industries stopped hiring for a while. And it takes time to really start the engine and really start recruiting full-time, full force again. So it doesn't mean that it's impossible. It doesn't mean that you want to be able to get a job. Even if you are living in Philippines, I'm sure there are job sites that you can check. I'm sure you still have LinkedIn with all the offers that you can get on there. Just make sure that you approach your job search in a positive way. And this makes really a huge difference. And those of you who've been watching my videos, you know that if you approach a job search if you really dread it, if you approach it as something negative, as something that you just have to do for the sake of it, your job search is not going to be as successful as if you plan it, as if you approach it as something useful for you, as really something that is really motivating for you because you want a job. It doesn't really have to be just a paycheck. It could be a position that you can actually enjoy. If you start approaching your job search in a similar way, I guarantee that you will make a lot more progress. And the same goes, just start using everything. You should start using your contacts. You could use your LinkedIn profile. You could use any references that people that can reference you, as I said, networking. You could really do a lot of things that you might not do at the moment, but you can. So it does depend on you. Your success is not, of course, the country you live in and the economical situation really affects on us, and it has an impact on the types of jobs, the quality of the jobs, the types of employers, but there are always jobs. This is something that I really don't like when people say there are no jobs, because this means they are already giving up before starting. And I never really want anyone to give up before they try, before they really make enough effort. It's not easy, I know, but you can definitely get a job. Okay, let me know if you want something more specific related to that, okay? Okay, let me go ahead and to my next question. The next question really is, what is something that would project a negative impression when you are interviewing someone? Okay, something that I would really, something that would be a no-no for me, a no-go in a candidate. I think I've already responded to a similar question at some point, but whenever the candidate is not making an effort, is not appearing interested, has not really been doing any research about the company or about the job, this is an immediate red flag for any employer or any recruiter. So stay away from people that really don't make any effort at all, because it's going to translate further on in anything, whatever it is you are doing. Whether you are dealing with somebody from a certain company, you can see that people that don't put any effort or any interest in whatever they do, you can hardly tell that, you can hardly say that they are successful or they will be successful, or they would even project a positive professional impression. They don't, which is why for me the key point is really a motivation, projecting motivation, being well prepared, being also authentic. This is also one of the best advice that I could give you, because making sure that it's yourself, making sure that you are being authentic. And this is something that sometimes that we might forget, because depending on each situation and depending on the way we feel and the nervous that we might be, the company we are interviewing with, we can feel that sometimes we need to fake it, or we might be pressured into appearing somebody that we are not. That's eventually going to show during your interview, and it's not going to give a good impression. It's not going to project a good impression. Whenever you are making an effort as well to be somebody else, to appear a different person you are, if this is something circumstantial, depending on the employer and the type of interview you are basically experiencing, then this is not a job for you. This is not a place for you. You need to feel authentic, and you need to project this being yourself in an interview. That doesn't mean that you can't be professional. That doesn't mean you can't respond to all the questions. That doesn't mean you can't smile. You can be positive about the whole experience. One thing is not connected to another. Okay, so let me go ahead and see if I have any other question in here. Soleil Sun, hello Marat, always superb to hear your advices and suggestions. Thank you. Thank you very much, Soleil. I'm really glad that you've joined in and glad that you've stopped by and given me this kind feedback. I really appreciate that.